Forget the children's book illustrations of giraffes peeking out of windows and lions sleeping peacefully. The truth about Noah's Ark is far more harrowing than you could ever imagine. It was not a peaceful cruise, but a floating house adrift in the wrath of God. Inside that sealed wooden box was a slow-motion bomb. Thousands of predators were trapped with their prey in the dark, with toxic gas accumulating. The constant shaking threatened to break every bone in their bodies. How could 8 people survive for 370 days in that hell on Earth without electricity or technology? Today, we will peel back the layers of this myth to reveal extraordinary engineering solutions. These are secrets that modern science must bow down to in awe. If Noah had built the ark based on the imagination of Renaissance painters with a sharp bow and a sail, humanity would have been wiped out. Why? Because the purpose determined the shape. A normal ship is designed to go from point A to point B. It needs speed and a rudder to handle waves. But in the most terrifying flood in history, there was no destination, no port, no city, no land. The whole world had disappeared under deep water. You didn't need to go anywhere, but you just needed to do one thing: not sink. The Bible describes a strange structure, unlike any other ship, a giant rectangular box. The golden ratio that God gave to Noah was 6:1, length 6 times the width. This was not a random religious number, but pure physics. Modern naval engineers call this the principle of passive stability. On the open sea, when waves as high as a 10-story building hit from all sides, a sharp-bowed ship would easily capsize. But with the box shape, the laws of physics changed. The more the ship tilted, the more gravity pulled it back to a balanced position. It was sluggish, lumpy, but absolutely safe. Look at the supertankers crossing the oceans today. They use the exact same ratio and dimensions. Narrator. Thousands of years ago, when humanity didn't know about calculus or hydrodynamics, was this a coincidence or the wisdom of the Creator? However, the box shape created another nightmare: structural stress. Imagine a long wooden plank. If you support both ends on 2 stones and press hard in the middle, it will break. When Noah's Ark rode on 2 waves at both ends, the middle of the ship was left hanging. The weight of thousands of animals would want to break the ship in half like a dry tree branch. That is why the Bible mentions the detail of 3 floors, Genesis 6:16. These floorboards were not just for dividing living space. In construction engineering, they acted as a bracing system. They connected the walls, locking the structure into a unified block, making it as sturdy as a floating fortress. Without these 3 floorboards, the ship would have collapsed under its own weight before the first drop of rain fell. We often imagine Noah's Ark with brown, golden wood, beautiful like furniture. But in reality, if you stood in front of it 4,000 years ago, you would see something much more terrifying. The Bible clearly states, "You shall coat it with pitch, both inside and outside." Bitumen is a type of thick, black, foul-smelling, and sticky sugar-based plastic. The ship was essentially a giant black coffin, shiny and slippery, drifting in the eternal night. This thick black layer had 2 life-or-death missions. First, It prevented a single drop of water from leaking in. Second, and more importantly, it turned the ship into a closed system. But this very closure created the most terrifying danger: internal suffocation, external exclusion. As soon as the door closed, the ship became the most dangerous place on Earth. Forget the fake harmony. You were locking thousands of predators, lions, tigers, bears, in the same box with their prey. In absolute darkness, the predatory instinct would be stimulated to the extreme. If you put a lion in the same hallway as a horse, within 24 hours, Noah's ship would become a blood-soaked slaughterhouse. And when blood flows, the madness of the hunt would spread to the entire ship. The mission of salvation would fail. To prevent this massacre, Noah needed an architectural solution: a complete isolation. The original Hebrew text uses the word kinnim to describe the rooms. This word does not mean spacious pens. It means nests or cages. We are talking about extremely cramped spaces, just enough to fit the animal's body. Sounds cruel? No, that is compassion.
When a 20-meter wave hits the ship, the whole structure tilts 30, 40 degrees. If the animals had space to run, they would be thrown into the walls, breaking legs, necks, and dying.
The cramped cages acted as natural safety belts, forcing the animals to lie still, using the walls themselves to support their bodies.
Furthermore, biology reveals another secret.
In the dark, cramped space, and with the rhythmic swaying, the animals' stress levels dropped. They fell into a lethargic state, a form of light hibernation.
Heart rate decreased. Metabolism slowed down. This solved two problems at once. They were less aggressive, and most importantly, they ate less. If all the animals were awake and operating at 100% capacity, Noah's food supply would have run out in just 3 months. But in that dark, cramped space, God put all the animals into a forced hibernation to conserve energy. However, there was an invisible enemy that wood and bitumen could not stop: sound. The roar of a tiger in a wooden hallway would be amplified like in a guitar soundbox. The panic of the chain reaction could kill the entire herd due to heart failure. The thick walls, filled with straw and grain between the cages, were not just for storage, but acted as soundproofing material. Noah didn't just build a cage, he built a giant soundproof room to eliminate noise, keeping the peace for the sleeping passengers. But even when they slept, there was one thing they couldn't stop: breathing. And this was when the Grim Reaper truly knocked on the door. Thousands of lungs exhaling hot CO2, tons of manure releasing flammable methane gas. The ship was turning into a giant, suffocating gas chamber. How to ventilate a sealed box without letting water in? Now, the audio features the consistent rhythm. The answer lies in a brilliant design, which we will explore next. Imagine you are in a sealed wooden box, filled with thousands of living, breathing creatures. Every breath exhales CO2, Every kilogram of animal waste decomposes into methane and ammonia. Without a ventilation system, Noah's Ark would not just be a prison, but a toxic bomb. If Noah lit a candle to find his way, the methane could turn the entire ship into a fireball in the middle of the ocean. Or, even more silently, the heavy CO2 would sink to the bottom, causing the animals on the lower decks to fall into a permanent sleep. How to solve this problem without electric fans or air pumps? The Bible provides a small but decisive technical detail. You shall make a window for the ark, 1 cubit high at the top. Genesis 6:16. Many think this window was for sightseeing. Wrong. In the Great Flood, there was only water and destruction. There was nothing to see. It operated on the principle of thermodynamics, which we now call the chimney effect. Thousands of animal bodies radiated heat. This heat warmed the air inside. Hot air is lighter, so it rose and found its way out through the gap at the top of the ark. As the hot air escaped, it created a negative pressure, a suction force. This force automatically pulled fresh, cool, oxygen-rich air from outside through the ventilation gaps. Noah's Ark was breathing. It used the body heat of the animals to power a natural air conditioning system. The more animals, the stronger the air pump. A brilliant design that didn't cost a single watt of electricity. But this ventilation solution led to another physical problem: the stability of the center of gravity. To make the ventilation work, large animals had to be at the bottom to push the hot air up. But if Noah put elephants, rhinos, and hippos in the wrong place, the disaster would be immediate. When the first wave hit, the massive weight on the top floor would cause the ship to lose its center of gravity, flip over, and sink in 5 minutes. To survive, Noah had to follow the principle of weight distribution in modern naval architecture. But if Noah put elephants, rhinos, and hippos in the wrong place, the disaster would be immediate. Therefore, the bottom deck of the ark was not a waste storage area. It was the home of the giants. Elephants, rhinos, and the largest animals were placed on the bottom deck. Hundreds of tons of muscle and bone acted as a ballast, locking the ship to the water's surface. When the storm pushed the ship to the left, the weight at the bottom pulled it back to the right. The ship balanced itself like a giant, wobbly toy. But the price for this stability was the sacrifice of the animals on the bottom deck. It was the dampest, coldest, and darkest place. All the water condensed and flowed down there. No sunlight ever reached it. But in the disaster, there was a blessing. All the water condensed and flowed down there. No sunlight ever reached it. The darkness was the natural medicine. The giant animals became lethargic, moved less, and were less aggressive. The bottom deck became a giant, collective sleeping room where energy was conserved to wait for the day of rebirth. We have solved the air and stability problems, but what about the empty space? 5,000 to 7,000 species need to eat every day. There were only 8 people, Noah's family. If they had to carry every bucket of water, haul every bag of dry grass up and down 3 floors to serve every animal cage, death from overwork in the first week. Human strength is limited. This calculation is impossible if done by hand. The answer lies in smart architecture. If the bottom deck is the ballast, the top floor is the home of the humans to avoid the smell and get light. If the bottom deck is the ballast, the top floor is the home of the humans to avoid the smell and get light. This is the strategic position. Far from the dampness of the bottom deck, avoiding the direct heat from the ship's hull. A dry and stable place to store seeds and dry food. They use the only free, infinite, and automatic force, gravity. Ancient engineers could have designed a system of pipes or slides connecting the middle floor food storage directly to the animal troughs on the bottom floor. Noah didn't need to carry bags. He just needed to open a small trapdoor under the storage floor. Grain and dry grass would automatically fall through the pipes, landing right in the mouths of the hungry animals on the bottom floor. This backbreaking work was reduced to a few minutes. An automatic feeding system operating on gravity. But the input was hard. The output was even more terrifying. Thousands of animals excreted tons of manure and urine every 24 hours. If Noah's 8 family members had to carry shovels to clean every cage, they would never finish. And if the waste accumulated, the ammonia gas would rise, blinding and burning the lungs of every living thing on the ship in just a few days. Disease would spread and wipe out life before the water receded. How to clean without running water or high-pressure sprayers? The solution came from their enemy, the storm. Researchers believe the animal cage floor was not solid wood, but a slatted floor, like modern livestock cages. When the ship rocked violently on the ocean, that movement acted as a perfect cleaning mechanism. Waste fell through the slats into a lower storage compartment or a sloped drainage system. From there, it was discharged directly into the sea. The violence of the ocean cleaned the ship. Noah didn't need to exert effort. He just needed to design it right from the start. The violence of the ocean cleaned the ship. Noah didn't need to exert effort. He just needed to design it right from the start. Outside is a vast ocean, but a sip is suicide. The sound of a turbulent ocean. The flood of the Great Flood was not swimming pool water. It was a toxic soup of mud, rotting animal carcasses, bacteria. No filtration technology at that time could handle it. The only source of clean water was the sky. The ship was a giant rain-harvesting basin. A drainage system channeled rainwater into storage tanks on the top floor. Why on the top floor and not the bottom? For coolness. Water at the top creates pressure. Noah just needed to open a valve, and clean water would flow through pipes to the lower floors. a fully automated hydraulic system. In summary, Noah's Ark was not just a boat. It was a massive biological machine. Animal body heat powered the ventilation system.
Animal weight balanced the ship. Ocean waves cleaned the ship.
Everything formed a perfect, closed circle.
But this machine still needed a brain to control it.
And the 8 people on the Ark were facing another challenge: psychological isolation. While the bottom deck was the damp home of the sleeping giants, the middle was the dry warehouse. This arrangement was not just for comfort, but a psychological necessity. The Bible mentions the window was only at the top. No side windows. This created a psychological effect of being trapped.
Living for 370 days without seeing the horizon, the sea, or the day and night cycle.
They only saw a narrow strip of light above. Why such a cruel design? Psychologists believe it was a form of mercy.
If they had side windows, they would have seen the end of the world.
That sight would have broken their minds.
If they had side windows, they would have seen the end of the world.
And the most detailed part of the story is in Genesis 7:16.
Then the Lord shut him in,